In this video, I'm going to take a look at the new Netflix film about Marilyn Monroe and separate fact from fiction. Hello lovelies, my name is Laura and I'm a big fan of biopics and Marilyn Monroe. I was really excited when I heard that there was going to be a new movie about Marilyn Monroe on Netflix, but after watching it, I was left feeling a little disappointed. A lot of the information in this film was either inaccurate or just plain made up. In this video, I'm going to take a look at the truth about Marilyn Monroe and separate fact from fiction. Thank you Jovis Venus Pro 2 hair removal for sponsoring this post. And this product is made with a creative full screen sapphire for the treatment surface. Anti-aging and hair removal device has an ice cooling head made from full screen ultra thin sapphire, and this is what makes it different from other IPL products on the market. And it is a flat screen design which is easy to clean, and it makes the treatment surface bigger. It has 6 modes of precise hair removal for face, arms, underarms, legs, bikini line, and it also has a skin rejuvenating mode which helps brighten the skin and is for anti-aging. And there are also 6 different levels of energy and unlimited flashes for professional results. So this is the automatic flash mode, and you can hold the control button for 3 seconds or touch the flash icon under the bikini line mode, and this will cause it to automatically flash so you can do your whole body in 7 minutes. It's luxurious and high quality appearance, as well as a creative full screen sapphire, and I love it. I use it on my face for hair removal, and then I went through and did the anti-aging after. I've been doing this every night, and I'm also going to do my legs as well as my bikini line and underarms, and then you just put on the sunglasses, and I just feel like I'm going to save so much money doing this at home. And I'm really excited to do the IPL anti-aging as well, because those treatments are really expensive if you go to a salon and get a professional IPL. So thank you Jovis for sponsoring this post, and click the link below in my description box if you want to try it out for yourself. Alright, let's jump back into the video. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most iconoclastic figures of the 20th century. Her image is still instantly recognizable even 60 years after her death. So it's no surprise that Netflix's new biopic Blonde has been generating a lot of buzz. The film chronicles Monroe's life from her humble beginnings in Hollywood to her tragic death. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most iconic actresses of the 20th century. Blonde is a new biopic film about her life starring Ana de Armas. Blonde is based on the 2000 novel by Joyce Carol Oates. The film follows Marilyn from her early days as a struggling actress to her rise to stardom. Blonde is a fictionalized account of Marilyn's life, but it is based on real events. Marilyn Monroe was an American actress, model, and singer, and she was born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1st, 1926 in Los Angeles, California. Marilyn's mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, was a film cutter at RKO Studios. Marilyn's father, Charles Stanley Gifford, was a supervisor at RKO Studios. Marilyn's parents divorced when she was 6 years old, and she went to live with her mother. Marilyn had a different childhood. She was often neglected and suffered from anxiety and depression. Marilyn began modeling at the age of 16 and quickly became one of the most popular pinup girls in America. In 1946, she signed a contract with 20th Century Fox and made her film debut in The Shocking Miss Pilgrim. Marilyn's career took off in the 1950s, and she quickly became one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Marilyn starred in such classics as Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Niagara, How to Marry a Millionaire, The 7-Year Itch,
Bus Stop, and Some Like It Hot, to name a few. Marilyn Monroe was more than just a pretty face. She was a talented actress with immense star power. Marilyn unfortunately passed away of an overdose on August 5th, 1962 at the age of 36. There is debate around how she passed away. I will leave that open-ended. She left behind a legacy as one of the most iconic actresses in history. Marilyn Monroe and Princess Diana, two of the most iconic women of the 20th century, one a global film star, the other a much-loved family member of the British royal family. Both lost their lives tragically young at the age of 36, and both have been the subject of numerous biopics over the years. However, two new films, the Marilyn Monroe biopic Blonde and Princess Diana's biopic Spencer, are set to offer a new perspective on these two icons. Both films dive into their psyche and elaborate on how the heroines were sensitive, guileless Red Riding Hoods navigating a forest full of wolves. Marilyn Monroe was constantly hounded by the paparazzi, with her every move being scrutinized by the world's media. This intense public scrutiny took its toll on her mental health, and she was eventually consumed by her own demons. Princess Diana, on the other hand, was constantly hounded by speculation about her marriage to Prince Charles, and she was hounded by the paparazzi as well. This led to her feeling isolated and alone, leading her to seek solace in the arms of another man. Both films present these women as victims of an intrusive and unforgiving media. However, while Marilyn Monroe's story ends in tragedy, Princess Diana's also ends in tragedy, but in the film it actually ends in hope. Her decision to leave her husband and start a new life away from the royal spotlight is an act of defiance that offers a glimpse of hope for a happier ending with Diana. But both these films, I really don't like how both of these people were portrayed in these films. They made Marilyn Monroe look so depressed and made it seem like her whole life was just filled with sadness and she had nothing else to offer. And then Diana too, it just made her look so bad in that movie where she was just so mentally ill. But I just feel like there's so much more that these people had to offer and that they're just being portrayed wrongly. There are a few events in history that have been more shrouded in mystery than the untimely death of Marilyn Monroe and Princess Diana. Both women were icons in their own right, and their sudden deaths left the world reeling. In the years since, the historical truths of both their stories have become shrouded in a fog of conspiracy theories and commercial exploitation. However, there are still some who believe the truth lies somewhere in between. Whatever the case may be, Marilyn Monroe and Princess Diana will always be remembered as the two most intriguing figures of our time. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most famous actresses of her time, and her life has been the subject of intense speculation and debate ever since her untimely death in 1962. The new film Blonde attempts to explore Monroe's life, but the source material for the film is not Marilyn's actual life, but Joyce Carol Oates' fictional reimagining of that life in her 2000 novel of the same name. Oates herself has said that the novel is not a biography or even a biographical novel, but a distillation of Marilyn's life, a work of fiction. This complicates matters when trying to determine what is fact and what is fiction in Blonde. It is clear that the film is not meant to be an accurate portrayal of Marilyn's life, but rather an exploration of the legend and mythology that has grown up around her. As such, it should be viewed as a work of fiction and not a documentary, but unfortunately a lot of people who will see this film do not realize this and think that this is how Marilyn's life actually was. So I'm in many ways doing this video so people know the truth about Marilyn. And as you've known, I've done many videos about her over the years, so I find this very disrespectful. And one of the myths was Marilyn Monroe involved in a polyamorous relationship? In the film, Marilyn, Ana de Armas, meets Edward G. Robinson Jr. and Charlie Cass Chaplin Jr., two young actors struggling to survive in the shadows of their well-known fathers while taking classes at the LA actors circle the two men who are free-spirited, troubled, and attractive, as Marilyn herself see her for who she really is, rather than being misled by Marilyn Monroe's alter ego like so many of the men she meets. As a result, they quickly develop a fun, passionate three-way relationship where she can be herself. They continue to be friends long after it's over, and most of this is actually an invention. In actuality, neither Chaplin nor Robinson were known to be gay, let alone in a relationship with one another, or even to be bisexual. There's no proof that Robinson was ever more than Monroe's friend, despite reports of a fleeting liaison between Monroe and Chaplin appearing in Hollywood gossip magazines. In his memoir in 1960, Chaplin confirmed the rumors stating that one of the young girls I had a relationship with at the time, circa 1947, was the same age as I, 21, and was an attractive, petite, unknown movie actress named Norma Jean, who was under contract at 20th Century Fox. Chaplin continued, however, from a professional point of view, it was absolutely vital for her to be seen among all other types of cinema stars to get the press interested in giving her notice. We were estranged as a result, and I haven't spoken to her in a while. According to some reports, Chaplin finding Monroe in bed with his brother Sidney ended the relationship, rather than Monroe going out with cinema stars for publicity. Robinson would have reconnected with Monroe in the years after, when he played a little part as a gangster in Some Like It Hot. The movie, however, leaves out this incident and implies that any further communication after the couple's physical relationship ended was done by correspondence. Robinson reportedly called Marilyn just before she passed away to inform her that Chaplin had passed away. According to the movie, in actuality, Chaplin lived for almost 6 more years than Monroe. And another topic in the movie was Marilyn Monroe's mother mentally ill? Young Norma Jean's mother, Gladys, is divorced in the movie, and she constantly snaps at her daughter, blaming her for causing her father to leave, who is married to someone else. Gladys's behavior becomes more and more erratic. She even drives Norma Jean towards a wildfire while only wearing a nightgown, until she finally tries to drown Marilyn in the bathtub, at which point she's taken to a state hospital for the mentally ill. After knocking on a neighbor's door, Norma Jean is temporarily taken in by the neighbor before being moved to an orphanage. Gladys Baker, Monroe's mother, had a history of mental illness. In fact, Gladys's brother committed himself, and both of their parents passed away in facilities for the detention of the mentally ill. After experiencing a mental breakdown in January 1934 and receiving a paranoid schizophrenic diagnosis, Baker spent the remainder of her life moving in and out of hospitals. Following Gladys's collapse, Monroe was taken in by Grace Goddard, a close friend of her mother, who later took on the role of her legal guardian. She eventually left, though, after a few months because Goddard's husband had abused her. This incident was taken out of the movie. She first moved in with her mother's sister-in-law, then to the LA Orphans Home, until finding a more secure home with Goddard's friend, Aunt Anna, when she was a teenager. Gladys saw her daughter in the hospital in 1946 after being discharged, and she vanished once more. Monroe had previously been in foster care. When her daughter was only 2 weeks old, Gladys left her with a foster home. For the following 7 years, Monroe lived in this largely secure environment until 1933, when her foster mother decided that her mother and daughter should be reunited. Despite having intermittent contact with her mother throughout her life, as the movie portrays, the actor chose the last name of her maternal grandmother, Monroe, for her stage name. And did Marilyn Monroe have a fixation with her father? In the film, Gladys presents a picture of a lovely guy to young Norma Jean and informs her that he is her father, but she must never discuss this because he was married and people would find out she was an illegitimate child. He also worked at the studio, she says, but she won't give Marilyn Monroe his name. According to the movie, Marilyn's whole existence revolved around finding her father, who had vanished and trying to win his love. As a result, she married older men and addressed them as daddy in an overtly childish manner. Although she was baptized as Norma Jean Baker, Gladys was married to Martin Mortensen at the time of Monroe's birth, thus she would not have been seen as an illegitimate child. However, it has never been verified that Charles Stanley Gifford, Gladys's supervisor at RKO Studios, where she worked as a film editor, not an actress as in the movie claims, is in fact Monroe's biological father, as suggested by DNA evidence shown in a 2022 documentary on French television. There is no evidence that Monroe was as fixated on her father as the movie suggests, despite the fact that she did have 2 husbands who were significantly older, made several attempts to find her father, and admitted to interviewer William J. Weatherby, "For years I thought having a father and being married meant happiness." And in the movie, Joe DiMaggio is portrayed as being very abusive towards Marilyn. In the film, as her fame soars, Joe DiMaggio, a recently retired Yankee and beloved national baseball figure, pursues Marilyn. He assures her that he will keep her safe and provide her with a normal family life. Monroe, who can't cook for starters, finds it challenging to fulfill Joe DiMaggio's needs for an Italian-style wife, and he feels threatened by her rising notoriety and the attention she attracts from other men. He gets angry and pushes her around during certain disputes in the film. And unfortunately, a lot of this is accurate. Joe DiMaggio, who was 12 years older than Monroe, tried to manage her career by advising her to stay home full-time rather than accepting roles that would have helped her maintain the sexualized blonde bombshell persona she was most known for. Additionally, he urged her to dress more subtly and avoid making a scene in front of people. And DiMaggio, who later sought treatment for anger control, was physically violent if she disobeyed these restrictions. Joe DiMaggio Jr. remembers hearing his father and Marilyn yelling when he first awoke. "After a little while, I heard my father chasing Marilyn as she ran out of the front door and down the stairs. She was sort of half dragged back to the home by him after he caught up to her and grabbed her by the hair. She attempted to fight him off and was unsuccessful." Despite this, DiMaggio and Monroe maintained a strong relationship even after their 9-month marriage ended in divorce. DiMaggio selected Monroe's gravestone, identified her body, and planned the little ceremony after her passing. And some other things that are talked about in the film Blonde are Monroe's abortions and miscarriages. After splitting up with the 2 juniors in the film, Blonde depicts Marilyn having an abortion. However, it is unclear whether this was Marilyn's choice and stemmed from her concern that her mother's mental instability might run in the family, as the movie suggests, or whether the studio arranged it so she could start filming Gentlemen Prefer Blondes on schedule. A miscarriage occurs a few years later after Marilyn trips and falls while carrying a tray to a beach picnic. Marilyn is now married to playwright Arthur Miller and is overjoyed to be expecting a child. Monroe really experienced a miscarriage in 1956 while still married to Miller, then lost an ectopic pregnancy in 1957, and then experienced a second miscarriage in late 1958. However, her acquaintances informed biographers that the determined actress had several abortions. One friend photographer, Amy Green, claimed that she had as many as a dozen, some of which were back alley procedures that cause long-term reproductive harm. There is little hard evidence to support this claim. If anything, it was just the way these scenes were filmed. They were really gruesome and just a little bit too much for me. And I felt like the director, Andrew Dominik, was almost like attacking women. It's like he almost hates them. And I just thought it was too gruesome. It was too much for me anyways. And I'm sure a lot of other people felt that way too, even though it was very common for actresses to be forced into having abortions in old Hollywood. I believe it's happened to many of them, almost all of them actually, especially in the 50s, 40s, 30s. And was Marilyn Monroe a casting couch victim? The movie depicts a delighted Marilyn meeting studio boss Mr. Z at a meeting. If it results in a contract with the studio, may be her big break. she discovers that giving a sexual favor is required of her instead of actually taking a screen test. Then he takes advantage of her sexually. Later, Monroe is informed that she has been cast a small but standout role in All About Eve, one of her first screen appearances. Mr. Z is probably Darryl F. Zanuck, the president of 20th Century Fox, the production company Monroe ultimately signed a contract with. Zanuck was well known for his conferences with celebrities and for having a well-documented habit of flashing himself at women, according to the New York Times. However, Monroe's historian, Anthony Summers, noted that nothing shows any of the casting couch sex sessions Monroe recounted with Zanuck. In nearly 700 interviews, I found nothing to imply that a Hollywood mogul had taken advantage of Monroe. And again, this just shows that the director just makes it seem like Monroe has no real talent and she's not a good actress, and that the only way she would have made it is by doing sexual favors, which is very unfortunate. The film leaves out Monroe's refusal to submit to Zanuck once she acquired star power because it is so determined to make her seem to be a victim. Actors who were under contract at the time were expected to follow instructions. Marilyn explained to Life magazine that an actress isn't a machine, but they treat you like one. Following the success of Fox's highest grossing movie to date, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Monroe anticipated being able to command jobs that showcased her variety as an actress. When Fox offered her yet another role as a blonde bimbo in a bad film, she returned the script with trash written on the title page and declined to show up for a shoot, instead taking off to New York to launch her own production company. An enraged Fox filed many lawsuits against her and briefed the media, but Monroe didn't back down. By withdrawing these cases, increasing her pay to $100,000 per movie, and granting her the authority to approve the script, director, and cinematographer for every one of her movies. Zanuck capitulated in January 1955. And another thing in the film was portrayed in a weird way, and it's if JFK and Monroe had a relationship. So in the movie Blonde, Kennedy has Marilyn Monroe brought to his bedroom by Secret Service personnel for a booty call. The president, JFK, who is preoccupied with watching the launch of the Friendship 7 rocket, barely acknowledges her before telling her to get to work. The agents whisk her out all wham bam without even a thank you, after treating her with the same regard and affection as he would a doll, with no needs or a personality of her own. I just feel like Marilyn Monroe wouldn't put up with this in real life, to be honest. I just think it's fabricated. From almost the moment she rose to fame, there have been rumors and speculative rumors regarding Monroe's relationship with President Kennedy. In 1962, at a Madison Square Garden gala event, she serenaded him with the breathy version of Happy Birthday while donning this infamous skin-tight outfit. Although there is no concrete evidence, the weight of the rumors points to Monroe and Kennedy having a physical relationship. They were undoubtedly acquainted, according to Jerry Blaine, a former Secret Service agent on Kennedy's detail. The president met Monroe in 1961 at Peter Lawford's home in Santa Monica, and then at a gathering in New York after the gala. Although they weren't alone, Blaine claimed. I never saw any proof of an affair, but I don't know what transpired behind closed doors, he continued. Contrarily, Frank Sinatra's friend and road manager Tony, who was close to both Marilyn Monroe and JFK, stated, I would imagine that there were feelings on either side based on conversations he had with Sinatra over the years. It wasn't just a fling for Monroe, he claimed. She admired him and respected him. Even though she had such strong feelings for him, she wouldn't let it go that far because she didn't want to end the president's marriage. There is some question as to whether it was a 1 or 2 night stand as well. Monroe's encounter at Bing Crosby's home in Palm Springs in March 1962, soon after her divorce from Miller, was the sole time of her affair with JFK, according to Monroe writer Donald Spoto. After the weekend, a lot of people believed there was more to it. Marilyn, on the other hand, gave me the feeling that it wasn't a big deal for either of them. It happened only once, that weekend, and that was it," Roberts recounted. What is exceedingly improbable is that Monroe would allow Kennedy to treat her with such contempt as Blonde suggests, despite the fact that the womanizing president was notoriously unromantic with his conquest. She was no longer an insecure, aspiring starlet, but rather one of the biggest movie stars in the world. She had also already been married to two of the most prominent men in America, and involved with a number of other men, including Marlon Brando, so she was unlikely to be taken in by glamour and wealth and put up with any of that, in my opinion. For another, according to a documentary based on 650 taped interviews Summers conducted for his biography, Monroe and Kennedy first met in 1954 when he was the junior senator from Massachusetts. After being introduced by Lawford, the two would meet for drinks at a dive bar frequented by movie stars called the Malibu Cottage whenever Kennedy was in California. So it's not like she was some sort of presidential groupie. James Spada, yet another biographer, asserts that Bobby Kennedy seized his opportunity after JFK dumped Monroe in 1966 and made his move. And Frank Sinatra's friend Tony supports this. "You're not going to be with me, so maybe I'll take it up with your brother," she allegedly thought, an echo of her alleged affair with Chaplin's brother when things with Jack phased out, he told People, suggesting that her relationship with Bobby Kennedy didn't last anywhere near as long or was as deep as her relationship with JFK. Many of Marilyn Monroe's admirers, including myself, believed that her reputation had already been tarnished, most recently by Kim Kardashian, who allegedly harmed Marilyn Monroe's legendary dress by wearing it to the 2022 Met Gala as a publicity ploy. An unpleasant interview with the movie directors Andrew Dominik that went viral caused further outrage since Dominik came off as oddly uninterested and even disdainful of Monroe's legacy and body of work. Blonde bombshell Marilyn Monroe, the name alone conjures up images of classic femininity and old Hollywood glamour. But for the director Andrew Dominik, Monroe was nothing more than a pain in the ass. In a recent interview, Dominik was asked about his upcoming biopic on Monroe, and he made it clear that he has no interest in her legacy. "I don't give a damn about Marilyn Monroe," he said. "I'm not interested in making a Marilyn Monroe movie. I'm interested in making a movie about Marilyn Monroe." When asked if he thought Monroe was overrated, Dominik simply replied, "Yes." He went on to say that he disagrees with the way Monroe is remembered and that her body of work doesn't interest him. It's clear from Dominik's comments that he has no respect for Marilyn Monroe or her place in history, and judging by his dismissive attitude, it seems unlikely that his upcoming film will do anything to change that perception. And it definitely doesn't. It seems like he genuinely doesn't like Monroe, doesn't respect her, doesn't care about her, and kind of hates women in general. In recent years, there has been a growing debate about how accurately violence and suffering should be depicted in the media. This debate was recently reignited by Netflix's release of Blonde, as well as the release of Jeffrey Dahmer, the new series on Netflix. While some argue that the Blonde film accurately depicts the tragedy of Monroe's life, others argue that it exploits her and is insensitive. This debate has also been spurred by Netflix's release of Dahmer, a series based on the life of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. While some argue that the series accurately depicts the horror of Dahmer's crimes, others argue that it is unnecessary to remake this. Clearly, this is a complex and sensitive issue. There's no easy answer, and each case must be considered in its own merits. However, one thing is certain, as our media becomes more realistic and sophisticated, these debates are going to become more common. It was just weird because I watched the whole Dahmer series and it definitely gave me a really uneasy feeling in my stomach the entire time. It gives you a sense of anxiety. And when I watched the Marilyn Blonde film, I had the same sensation the entire time. And I was like, why is this movie about Marilyn Monroe giving me the same feeling about the show depicting a serial killer? I'm like, it just shouldn't be that way. Like, I shouldn't have the same sensation, and it just made me uneasy. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most iconic actresses of her time. Her careless, glamorous persona won her legions of fans, and her untimely death only further cemented her legend. However, her life was also shrouded in mystery, and many aspects of her story have been subject of speculation. And Netflix's new biopic Blonde seeks to exploit and tell Marilyn's story in an untruthful light. However, the film definitely has come under fire for the depiction of Marilyn Monroe's relationships, mental health, and her death. While the film may not be completely accurate, and it's actually horrible how they filmed the death scene in a room where Marilyn Monroe actually died, which is disturbing. And I definitely don't think this film offers a fresh perspective. I just think it shouldn't be labeled as a biopic if you're going to make it, and just tell it what it is and warn people that this isn't truthful. Even have a caption, because I know a lot of films in the beginning, they're like, this is inspired by but not based on true events. So it's weird that they didn't even have a disclaimer or anything. And so unfortunately we are left with just an awful depiction of Marilyn Monroe. Let me know in the comments below. Have you seen this film? Are you going to watch it? What did you think in the comments below? All right, don't forget to check out some of my other Marilyn videos. See you soon. Bye.